A haunting discovery in New Britain.
There was human remains right across the street from where me and my kids live.
Shocking details uncovered.
It's heartbreaking. It's a little girl.
An 11-year-old girl gone.
The victim of prolonged physical abuse and malnourishment.
Left to starve to death, missing for a year. The girl's own mother arrested. Charged with murder, along with her now ex-boyfriend. The victim's aunt also accused.
What goes through your heart as a family member?
Disgusted. Disgusted.
Now, a WFSB Plus exclusive. Little girl lost. What happened to Jacqueline Torres-Garcia? Thank you for streaming with us. I'm Kara Sundlin. How could this happen? An 11-year-old girl in Connecticut, not seen in public for more than a year after her mother signed a form to homeschool her, only to turn up dead in a very tragic case of child abuse. It's a little girl lost, her life cut short, but also unaccounted for so long. Our WFSB Plus exclusive now looks closer at what happened to Jacqueline Torres-Garcia and how she may have slipped through the cracks here in Connecticut.
Is everything okay?
Yeah.
This is Farmington Police body cam video of Carla Garcia on December 29th, 2024, as officers responded to a noise complaint at the Wellington Drive apartment that she shared with her then boyfriend, Jonathan Nanita, also shown here on camera.
We just got a call. There's loud noises and stuff like that. Everyone's okay?
Yeah, it's, my wife's pregnant, so she just be having mood swings. And
Okay.
I be trying to calm her down.
Sometimes the walls are, you live in apartments, walls are
Yeah, we
thin
always get
sometimes.
complaints. They ain't been big complaints since we first moved here, so.
Carla telling officers they plan to move back to New Britain soon.
We came from New Britain. It's better over there because we don't have no complaints at all.
But what police did not know, and would learn just over 9 months later, Carla's daughter, 11-year-old Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia, was dead. Her body was in the basement of their apartment that December night and had been for months, the victim of fatal child abuse from starvation. On October 8th, 2025, a plastic tote container holding Mimi's remains was found dumped in the backyard of an abandoned home on Clark Street in New Britain. Quick police work resulted in the arrests of Carla and Nanita, charged with murder, and Carla's sister, Jacqueline Garcia, accused of child cruelty. Carla and her sister's aunt, Jacqueline Garcia, shared her shock and horror with us.
What police revealed to us is that she was starved and abused.
Right.
What goes through your heart as a family member?
Disgusted.
The young girl's biological father, Victor Torres, was too stunned and angry to speak. Everyone wondering, how could Mimi have gone missing for more than a year without anyone reporting it? Yaxie had lost touch with the family, but points to the move to Farmington and Mimi being removed from the New Britain school system to be homeschooled. According to the Consolidated School District of New Britain, she was last seen in a classroom in the 2023-2024 school year. The district confirmed that Jacqueline Torres-Garcia attended kindergarten through 5th grade in New Britain. On August 26, 2024, which would have been Jacqueline's first day of 6th grade, her mother, Carla Garcia, filed an official notification of withdrawal out of New Britain's school district form, stating that the student's new address would be in Farmington. Also, on August 26th, Carla signed an intent to homeschool form for Jacqueline. Connecticut is one of 13 states with little or no regulations for homeschooling. There was no requirement to track little Jacqueline once Carla signed the paperwork, which WFSB has obtained. You can see the subjects to be taught are checked off: reading, writing, spelling, English grammar, geography, arithmetic, U.S. history, citizenship, and science. The total number of days scheduled for instruction, 180. And the teacher's method of assessment of student progress would be formative assessment and summative assessment. But the line that says an annual portfolio review will be held on or about was left blank. It's noted on this form that the line was for parental use only, not district mandated. We have also learned the Department of Children and Families had past involvement with the family dating back to January of 2013 when Carla gave birth to Jacqueline while being held in a detention center. Carla lost legal guardianship of Mimi until May of 2022, though DCF tells us they did not have any reports about the family from November of 2022 until January of 2025, when they investigated and later closed a case involving allegations of abuse and neglect against Jacqueline's younger sister. It was at that time, DCF tells us, that Carla was asked about Jacqueline. She told them that she was being homeschooled and was out of state, though DCF wanted to speak with Jacqueline, and in a shocking move, DCF claims that Carla had a different child pretend to be her daughter on a video call. It would be months later that evidence would show Jacqueline had been dead for months. Before Mimi's death came to light, a tragic case out of Waterbury began to unfold. In February of 2025, a boy pulled out of 4th grade by his stepmother, only to turn up 20 years later after setting fire to his room, saying he'd been held captive all that time. Police found him severely emaciated, weighing only 68 pounds. That set off calls for homeschooling regulation and reform in Connecticut, but to date, efforts have been overpowered by opposition.
Anytime you start talking about regulating homeschooling, you need to be very, very careful that we are preserving the rights of parents to take care of their children.
I think what we're trying to do is be respectful of the homeschooling community, be respectful of the choice that families are making there, but above all else, ensuring that we are still able to track and keep a solid record on the students who are homeschooled.
So our focus now is the homeschooling in Connecticut, and we know it's a very controversial topic. I'm joined by WFSB's Chief Investigative Reporter Sam Smink, who has led our I-Team investigations on this case, as well as our guests. We have 2 state representatives, Republican Ann Dauphiné, who's the ranking member of the Committee on Children, and Democrat Liz Linehan, who is a former co-chair of the Children's Committee. Both have been part of recent discussions. They're really out front on all of the issues surrounding homeschooling regulations. I want to welcome both of you. Thank you for coming here to help people understand more as we explore this tragic and horrible case. So I want to start with just giving our audience a basic idea of where you both stand, because I know that you're both very out front, but they're very opposite on your beliefs about homeschooling regulations. So Ann, let's start with you.
Sure. So far what I've read and what I've seen with all of these cases are really captivity cases. They really have nothing to do with homeschooling. There's so much information regarding Mimi that we still don't know to date. We've been hearing hearsay, reports from police, reports from DCF, but nothing has been factual. We do know that on the judicial website, it says that her date of death was June 21st, 2024, which doesn't kind of line up with everything else. So we're still kind of waiting to get the facts on that case. Apparently her mother put in a statement of request to homeschool in August, which doesn't line up with the judicial website that says her death was June 21st, 2024. We know that she was in school until June of 2024, so she had mandated reporters watching her with close eyes all the way up until June. So we really don't know her time of death, and that's kind of up in the air. So was she already dead when her mother said that she was going to homeschool her? And they were, I think if I got that right, they were living in New Britain but moving to Farmington.
Yes.
And she put that
opposite way.
Okay,
Yeah.
But either way, she was moving. So she put the request, I believe, in the town in which she was in, but then stated she was moving, or?
It's actually the opposite. She was in Farmington,
Okay.
and she was moving back to New Britain with the intent that the children would now attend New Britain school, so
Okay.
therefore she put that.
Okay.
But they always attended New Britain even when they were in Farmington. At
Okay.
least Jacqueline did, from what I understand.
But Ann, before I move on to Lynn, I want to make sure that what your position is, you don't believe there should be any more regulations for homeschooling. Is that correct?
Well, this is what I would argue. that regulations aren't going to keep people like Mimi safe. They're not going to keep the child that was in Waterbury safe. And then I know Representative Linehan and I go back to the Matthew Toronto case. Which,
he was a young boy with autism.
Boy, correct. So all of those...
Whose mother, like just to update our viewers, whose mother is serving prison time because it was believed that she starved him.
She starved him just like Mimi was starved. And I think the allegations against the Waterbury mother is that he was starved as well. But
yes.
Remember, the Waterbury case, he was in school for 5 years with eyes on him by mandated reporters. And for 5 years, there were reports given that he was starving. He was going into garbages and taking food. For 5 years, in a public setting, in a public school, with mandated reporters around, and nothing came of it, right? He was followed up with DCF and the police, and still nothing came of it.
Now, I want to get to you because, as we heard in that piece, one of the folks that we interviewed, and the Democrat in this case, said, you know, we respect parents' rights, but we think we have to, at a very core, protect children, and that means we have to be able to look in on folks. What is your position on maybe what needs to change since we are one of the most unregulated states when it comes to homeschooling?
We really are. And, you know, I know you started off by saying that we have very different views. I don't think necessarily that we have very different views. I think we have different views on how to fix the problem, but we recognize the problem in the same manner. I will say this. When it comes to homeschooling, we are one of the states that have the least regulations. We're not really talking about a homeschool issue. Homeschool families, by and large, are doing right by their children. What we're looking at is a child welfare issue, and these people who are harming children are utilizing a lax system in order to withdraw their child under the guise of homeschooling so that they can get away with the things that they're doing to their kids. Homeschool families are in the mix, unfortunately.
Right.
But ultimately, we do have to stand up for these kids and figure out a way that we can ensure their safety while still allowing homeschooling families to do what they need to do for their children too.
Liz, do you think we need more regulations after a couple of these cases coming to light where it appears that in this case there may have been an excuse to use homeschooling to shield away from authorities?
I do believe there needs to be more regulation, different regulation, but I want to be very clear. I have zero interest in regulating things like curriculum, test scores, how parents are teaching their children, what they're going to teach their children. What my concern is strictly on the child welfare side, and I want to ensure that the kids who are being homeschooled at home are safe and their parents still have the right to do so. There's a way that we can do that.
Sam, as you looked into this, I myself was speaking with a DCF officer who doesn't want to be named over the last several days, saying that she had seen many cases where she believed that people tried to use homeschooling as an excuse to get away from the eyes of DCF. What have you found with regard to homeschooling in these investigations? Could anything have made a difference for Mimi?
I mean, I can't genuinely say that without knowing all of the information. It definitely seems like there were multiple places in which she was failed. She was failed by family, outstanding family, extended family. She was failed by the child welfare system. I think where questions can come in and through my investigations is, you know, one question I think some people have is, we know Carla Garcia had, for all intents and purposes, no intention of actually homeschooling Jacqueline. So at minimum, what could be done so that parents like Carla Garcia can't take advantage? So I think that's where a question comes of, is there just, so I guess that's a question for you guys. At minimum, what could be done to prevent parents like Carla Garcia from just filling out a form and taking advantage of that system.
I think there's plenty that we can do. And I want to go back to say we've been having this discussion for years. As the former chair of the Committee on Children, in 2018 and 2019, we were discussing the Matthew Tirado case. Now, the Matthew Tirado case was a young man who was removed from school. He was 18 at the time of his death, and he was removed from school under the guise of homeschooling, and essentially was starved to death. His mother put locks on the cabinets so that he couldn't get to food. This was intentional. It was a homicide. It was child abuse. And she was the first one that really had us thinking about what we can do. So in 2018, the Committee on Children had a legislative forum about the issue. And ultimately, as chair, what I wanted to do was create a mechanism by which we would have forms made or have the ability to have a child come into their district in order to do a check-in so that eyes can get on them. But what we really were thinking, and this is what I'm continuing to think is the necessary move, is that we require right now children to get vaccinations. We require them to have physicals in order to go into the school year. Now, with the exception of the vaccinations, because you don't need to have those if you are not attending public school, why aren't we also requiring that the physicals are being, that paperwork is being transferred to the district just for the purposes to know that they are safe and alive? Will that solve everything? I don't think so, but it's a necessary first step.
Anne, I want to go to you that we have, Connecticut is right next to Massachusetts. Massachusetts has one of the strictest regulations. We have one of the most liberal, and there are, meaning no regulations. I know there are families who actually move here because we have such freedom with homeschooling, and those families might be wanting to have their children study outside of school to become a ballerina or a D1 athlete, and they need the flexibility of moving in and out. But what about the families like little Mimi, where perhaps they were using homeschooling to get away from those mandatory report eyes? Do you support anything that would prevent something like that, or you just think nothing should change because it wouldn't help?
So first of all, I want to say I do agree with Representative Linehan with regard to none of us want to see this happen to any of our children. None of us. These are atrocities that happen with children that were kept in captivity, literally. I will go back to the Matthew Tirado case, which there was no evidence at all that the mother had put in for homeschooling. That child was kept in captivity, and what I will say is what happened with that child is he was released from the courts. The judge said, we're no longer going to follow this case, and he died 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later. So when we talk about failures of systems, something is deeply wrong with those systems. We looked at the Mimi case, okay? We looked at the Waterbury case. The Waterbury case, he was in school for 5 years with mandated reporters looking at him. 5 years.
So you're saying it didn't help?
It didn't help. Now we go back to the Mimi case. She at birth, she was given to her grandparents because her mother, I believe, was a child abuser, and then returned back to the mother. We don't even know what the follow-up was that. They returned the child to somebody that was accused, I think, and charged with child abuse. She went back there. Now remember, she had mandated reporters following her at the time she left school in June 2024. She died, according to the report in the judicial website, on June 21st, 2024. June 20. So I think her death is we're not quite sure of where the facts lie with that, but she could have very well have been dead when the mother applied for homeschooling. So whether you apply to homeschool and there's a registry, I don't believe that that would save anybody necessarily.
I actually disagree, because if the death doesn't line up with the removal from homeschool, if we had regulations in place that said in order to remove a child from school to homeschool that you had to show up with the child, if Mimi unfortunately had already passed at that time, they wouldn't be able to show up. There would be no Mimi there. So it's not that the paperwork is wrong. It's the fact that the child had passed, unfortunately, and in order to hide that fact, the mother removed the child from school under the guise of homeschooling. If we had regulations that say, in order to remove a child from homeschool, you need to show up in person with that child, we wouldn't have been able to, we wouldn't have waited months to do that, to find out.
I want to hear from both of you, but I know Sam has been covering this as far as, did you see people, teachers, parents, everyone wants to know, like, didn't someone notice something was wrong, and did they report it? Would this reporting have helped?
Well, with a couple of things, at least for the New Britain School District has not answered whether they had ever contacted DCF themselves. They are shielded by confidentiality laws in Connecticut where they frankly don't have to make that answer. I do know from Farmington Police Department reports that the school district in Farmington, at least for the younger sister, had made some sort of complaints for that. And we know that based off police reports. And as far as the June 2024 date, I do want to address that quickly. From all the reports that I've read, the most common and most repeated claim was that Jacqueline was killed sometime in September, according to both what Jacqueline's mother told her sister, the aunt who's also arrested, and then based off of what Jonathan Anita said and when he was released from prison and that sort of thing, and he came home. Where the June 2024 date comes from is that Carla Garcia's sister, Jacqueline Garcia, and I know it can be confusing with the Jacqueline, who's also charged in the case, witnessed abuse that she told the police about as early as June 2024, because she lived with them from June 2024 to August 2024. And since the charges not only include murder, they include child abuse, that is the first date of which the set of crimes begins, according to Farmington Police. So that's where that comes from. But the most common date that has been repeated with interviews, multiple interviews with all of the suspects in this case and from other people, has appeared to be September 2024.
After she had filled out the form to homeschool.
After she had filled out the form. And we do know that, according to the New Britain School District, Jacqueline finished out the year in June 2024. So I don't know personally how late those schools go. But one thing I wanted to mention and kind of bring to you guys too is the DCF part of this too. And from doing my various research from the Toronto, from the Waterbury and that sort of thing. And to mention with Toronto, he was never actually taken out of school for homeschooling. His was a case more so of truancy in the school.
Because he was 18.
But his sister, his sister, the mom had applied for his younger sister to be homeschooled, and based off of the issues they had with Matthew Toretto, you should say there should have been some sort of there. But one thing we learned too, and again, New Britain School District under Connecticut law doesn't have to answer our questions, and they didn't. We asked if they had ever, one, contacted DCF themselves with concerns over Jacqueline's over the year, and if they had after the homeschooling form was filed. Now, I want to be clear. When a homeschool form is filed, that does not automatically trigger anything to DCF, because that's not a case of that. But the question could be, we see so many cases that the child advocate found where DCF was involved and then a child was homeschooled. You would think there'd be some sort of notification system.
Which is what you're suggesting, that maybe there's to be a physical check.
But the way the law is written is that if the school itself is not the reason DCF was called, DCF does not ever have to let a school know they're involved with a family, because it's privacy concerns.
Nor should they.
So say we don't, again, we don't know. Say New Britain didn't know DCF was ever involved with this family. They wouldn't know when a homeschooling form was filled out to automatically contact DCF. So is there a way, while also protecting the privacy of family, because we do know there are false claims, and you don't want to have a school think necessarily this family if it's false. Is there a way for the school district and DCF to potentially communicate a little bit better? Because we've seen a lot of these cases.
So communication would be extremely important, but we have to be very careful that we're not running afoul of due process.
Yes, and that's the thing.
And so just because you homeschool someone doesn't mean you should be referred to DCF.
And
so
that's
we have
the
to be
case.
very careful about that.
No, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for families that have had DCF involvement, and the school district knows that, and if the school district knows that, and then they see a homeschool form, they might reach out to DCF knowing that there has been a past involvement with DCF and just be like, you might want to know about this.
Well, and let me just jump in here. You make a very good point. And we're talking about substantiated cases with DCF versus non-substantiated.
Yes.
People make claims all the time and they're unsubstantiated. And you're correct. That was a substantiated case, history of abuse, and there was no follow-up. But I would say that, you know, we don't know the facts. You were saying all of these people claiming a date that she died and when she got out of school and what happened during the summer and on and on and on, right? But let's just say that we did have regulations that if you were homeschooled, you needed to be followed up on. We have, brought up truancy, I think you brought up truancy. We have almost 88,000 school children that have either chronic absenteeism or truancy that the public schools cannot keep up with. Now you're going to add this into the mix. So let me ask you this. At what point would they have been followed up on? August? The child, let's say she did die. Let's say she died the first or second week of September. How quickly would they have gotten in there and been able to intercept her death? Again, I don't see where regulations and changing the mandates and the regulations and all the rules are going to, if you will, save children. The mother, if she knew that she'd be followed up on, would say, I'm moving. She'd make a claim, I'm moving. Who's going to follow up on that? We can't keep up with the children we have in public school. We don't know where these truant children are. And now you're going to add homeschoolers to the mix? Who's going to do that? We have a shortage of teachers. We have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of DCF. We have a shortage of police. How are you going to track this? And again, it's the state wanting control over everything, and you're just not going to be able to do it. And I would argue that we are not going to eliminate evil. There's evil, bad people out there. We know they are. But these criminals aren't going to follow the law. If that mother knew that she was going to be investigated immediately once she put in for homeschool, you think she would have done that?
Well, obviously, the reports are that she actually, when DCF wanted to talk to her, she put another child on when we believe that Jacqueline had already passed away. So obviously, you are right. There are people who try to skirt the law all the time. I want to show some video of a hearing as we talk about this, and this looks. There's a lot of people there, and I know from interviewing Themis Claridis, she's on our weekly political show, who is our former House Republican leader, that the homeschooling lobby is one of the most vocal, most intense, shows up in large numbers. So as they show up, obviously they want freedom with their children. But Liz, as you see all that, do you worry that because it's such a vocal lobby that there's a fear to change anything?
I do. And not only that, but I want to be clear to say that I've heard from homeschooling families who aren't necessarily in that group, who believe that they can homeschool their children and would be happy to provide information in order to ensure the welfare of kids who may not have parents who are as on top of things as they are. The vocal group that comes out and they say they don't want any regulation and any change. I believe that they are a large number of the homeschoolers, but they are not the only homeschooling families. I've been working with a few homeschooling families and they are talking to me about ways that they think would be best to ensure the safety of children, because they don't want anyone to get hurt either, and a minor inconvenience would be worth it to them. So we've seen this a lot, where the vocal minority is believed to be the majority. And I will tell you, as someone who has been outspoken rather, for years, that the majority of parents in Connecticut agree with the fact that something needs to be done, and that there are, in fact, some homeschooling families who agree with that as well.
And let me have you respond to that. Do you agree that there are plenty of people in the homeschooling community who would be open to regulation that didn't infringe on their rights?
Well, I think that's interesting that Representative Linehan has individuals that are homeschooling that reached out to you and said that was okay. And this is what I would say to them. If you want to report in, you go ahead. You register every year and do what you think is right for you. But I haven't heard from one homeschool family, not one, and I've heard from hundreds of homeschool families who don't want to have to be part of a registry. Just listen to that. They have to register their children. What will be next? If they have to wear some kind of star on their jacket?
That's a bridge too far.
I'm just saying that you're going to mark them by registering. These individuals are innocent. And we're suggesting that they're guilty, and we must prove that they're innocent, right? They must come in and register, and now we have to prove that you're innocent. Come in and register. We want to look at you and prove that you're innocent. These are innocent families that don't want to answer to the public school system or, quite frankly, the state of Connecticut.
But they're not answering to the public school system. Answering to the public school system would be this is how I'm teaching my kid. This is the curriculum. This is how many hours a day we're doing it. This is the test scores. This is why they should graduate. That's not what we're asking. What we're asking is to talk to a physician when you bring your child in for the physician, and the physician signs off on a form that they've done some sort of a welfare check and file that with the state. That's it. We're not asking for any more information. And I don't like the fact that it's called a registry. I don't think that that is the proper terminology, because a registry would denote that there is some sort of a list, and that list is shared, and that list is somehow used for something else. That is not the case. It's just checks and balances.
I mean, let me just ask that we have regulations all the time that relate to health and safety. For instance, I remember when I was younger, you didn't have to wear a seatbelt, but you do now, and it's a law. And there were people upset about that. The government's going to tell me I have to wear a law in my car, and yet we tell people that you must wear a seatbelt. Is this any different?
It's very, very different. These children are being homeschooled, and I know Representative would agree with this. The majority of them, and I'm sure there are some that are being abused. There's no doubt about it. Just like happened in the Branford school. The child was going to school every day, seen by mandated reporters, went home and was beaten to death by his father with a bat. Nobody could have predicted that.
Right.
These things are going to happen. Evil is evil. Evil is evil. Again, we are presuming that these people are guilty until you prove them innocent. You must go get a physical and have the doctor say, you pass, you look okay, we're going to give you a free pass or whatever that is. So they're presumed guilty. You must be checked over by the state, by somebody, to say that you're innocent of harm to your children.
Well, or just that you're I don't know, I guess because I send my kids to school, they have to go to the physical or they can't go.
Well, and you know, everybody has a different method of how they believe medical care should be done. Some of them do homeopathic, naturopathic, unvaccinated, vaccinated, medical doctors, they all do that. But what we're saying is now you have to bring your child and prove to the state that your child is innocent and that you're innocent of abuse.
Okay. So we're probably not going to settle all of this, and this is why the conversation is so great, and to help people understand what role, if any, homeschooling plays in these horrific cases of child abuse. But as we go forward, we are at a boiling point in Connecticut, and it seems as though it is ripe for at least a discussion that in the past has led nowhere because of a very vocal opposition. Do you think now that there's enough uproar, and perhaps is something going to be done as we go into this new term, this new session?
My hope is that something will be done. I have heard from communities across the state who need something to be done. They don't want to ever see this happen again. The question is, will there be enough legislators who are willing to go out on a limb and support legislation when the vocal minority might make them feel that it's a little scary to do so. And my hope is that, yes, we are elected to do what is best for this community. We are a community. We are not just pockets of individuals. We need to think about what's best for all. And what's best for all is to ensure the health and the safety of our children, and we need to find a way to do that.
There are no facts or data that show that homeschool regulation, a registry, or any of the sort will keep our children safe, healthy, and protected. I just gave you an example of a Branford student who went home and got beaten to death. We have children that go home and commit suicide. it is not going to take care of that. And I told you there's ways that they will work around it. The people that want to hurt their children are going to dodge the system. They're going to say they're moving. They're not going to say they're homeschooling. I think that's what's going to happen, and that's what you're going to see happen. I don't think this is going to prevent the horrible cases that we talked about that just happened.
Very different opinions, and Sam, I know you're going to keep reporting on this, and we've got court dates coming up. We will continue to cover both angles of this story, and I know you'll be there as they discuss whether or not anything should be done as we enter a new session on homeschooling. I really want to say thank you to both of you for presenting both sides so we can help people understand as we cover this horrific case of a little girl lost. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. Doing nothing is not a choice.
Thank you, Sam, too. And thank you for joining us for this WFSB Plus exclusive, Little Girl Lost, What Happened to Jacqueline Torres-Garcia? We will continue to look into those answers for you. You can check out our other streaming specials as we continue to follow this case.